Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, I literally just got done about 25 minutes ago shooting a video about a big ass whooping that the state of California took today, which I always enjoy doing. And I was about to get out of here when one of my most reliable sources from the great state of California sent me a text. I had to take a look at it. It was a story about a crazy piece of legislation that's now passed out of Sacramento. It heads to the governor's desk. He has until October 14th to sign it. And this one is a little crazy. It won't sound crazy on its face, but once we dive into it, you'll see exactly how crazy it is. So today, let's spend a few minutes. Let's go back down to California and talk about
California's crazy Second Amendment tax.
Okay, before we get going down the road we are going down, anytime we do a video on California, I got to give a shout out to our very first California subscriber. That is, of course, Philip P. And Philip P. actually sent me this news story. I was just packing up, having done another video on California. It gets this text message. Check it out. I go, oh my God, I can't believe this. I need to do a video. Philip P., thanks for the tip on this. Okay, so follow if you would. Assembly Bill 28. What is Assembly Bill 28? Well, California, what that would do is that would provide an excise tax on all gun sales and ammunition sales statewide. It would collect roughly $159 million annually in new income, $75 million of which, according to the legislation, will be earmarked for gun violence prevention programs, whatever the hell that means. Now, I know that many of you who may be mildly ambivalent to this goes, what's the big deal? Well, let me tell you exactly what the big deal is. You see, we talk all the time about this all-out frontal attack on your Second Amendment rights. And while we so frequently focus on the attack that comes directly from the top down, that coming from the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, the ATF, and your state legislators, what you also need to understand is that they are trying to attack your rights in all other aspects, including from the bottom up. What I mean by that is they will do anything humanly possible to reduce access to firearms because they believe that saves lives. Now, reducing access to firearms for people who shouldn't be having firearms undoubtedly saves lives, but reducing access for you, the lawful and responsible gun owner nationwide, well, that doesn't do really anything other than achieve, of course, their ultimate goal, which is, that's right, civilian disarmament. Now, here's the other thing. When you step back and you think about it, you have an inalienable, God-given right of self-preservation, and that is announced in the Second Amendment in the sense that government cannot take that right from you, okay? You were born with that right. So we have an inalienable right under the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms. Now, can you name any other right in which you have to pay a fee or a tax to exercise that? That should raise the question. And then when you ask yourself, well, have we ever, in the history of our country, you know, if we're going to get into historical analogs, I guess, have we ever required individuals to pay money to exercise a constitutional right? And the answer to that question is, no, actually we have. Yeah, we have, you see, because let us go back and talk about poll taxes. Oh, poll taxes. Yeah, we don't like to talk about that because it's one of America's dark, dark chapters. What were poll taxes? Poll taxes were essentially a tax that needed to be paid by a voter before they could actually fill out a ballot. Put other ways, poll taxes was a way to keep certain economic groups from ever being able to exercise their right to vote. Put other ways, they were used to suppress African-American vote. It's plain and simple, okay? Now, poll taxes existed for many, many years in the United States, and it was not until in 1966, with the case of Harper versus the Virginia Board of Education, in which the United States Supreme Court struck down once and for all any form of poll tax. So think about it. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that a tax in order to exercise a constitutional right is unconstitutional. But guess what? Because even on the heels of that landmark ruling, which definitively stated that we can't do that, let us not also forget, and Governor Newsom, you should be aware of this because you're the constitutional scholar right now who's trying to pass the 28th Amendment, that shortly thereafter, what did we do? Oh yeah, we passed the 24th Amendment. Now, we don't talk about the 24th Amendment here on Washington Gun Law a whole lot. Why? Well, because the 24th Amendment makes it unconstitutional to implement any type of poll taxes, okay? So there really is no debating about the constitutionality of poll taxes. There's a very clear Supreme Court precedent, and there's a constitutional amendment that says, can't do it. Okay, now, Governor Newsom, of course, like I mentioned earlier, is a constitutional scholar because he's advancing the 28th Amendment at this particular point. So what we have now is a legislative scheme coming out of what I like to call the Death Star of gun control states. Of course, that is the state of California, that not only violates the Second Amendment, it violates the 24th Amendment. It's amazing when you think about it that you actually have a state legislature in America's most populous state that has knowingly passed a piece of legislation that violates not one, but two constitutional amendments. Now, the good governor has until October 14th to decide whether or not he's going to sign it. Now, in reading a bunch of other stuff coming out of various California publications, there's a real question as to whether Governor Newsom would sign this. What you say? That's what I said too. What? Well, apparently he has vetoed some other high-profile taxes. However, if you take a look at the groups that were most likely going to suffer the taxation, they were groups that would be most likely to support the governor should he run for re-election or should he decide to run for another office. The group here that is going to be affected the most is the very group that Governor Newsom has been declaring war on for many, many years now. Now, for those in the California state legislature who says, no, this is actually a tax on the retailers, okay? It's the retailers that pay this tax. It's not the consumer. Let me just give you some basic economics so that you can understand, because clearly you guys don't read the Constitution down there in California, and clearly most of you didn't take like Econ 101, Econ 102, micro and macro economics. But when government decides that they're going to implement corporate taxes, what they will do is they will put that tax burden on the company. Oh, congratulations. Now, the company, which of course, unless it's a government agency which doesn't have to pay taxes anyways, is a for-profit company. That means that you have owners and shareholders and things like that in which you need to keep people happy. And therefore, in a capitalistic society, that company likes to make money. Okay? What happens, though, is when that tax is imposed on the corporation, well, you see, that cuts into the profit margin. And the profit margin is really what dictates the success and or failure of a company, doesn't it? So, what does any smart company or company owner do? Well, of course, you take that tax and you pass it along to the consumer. That then erases the loss in profit margin, and it is the consumer that ultimately absorbs this. So, to anybody in the California state legislature who thinks that you're going to just be taxing gun stores, no, don't kid yourself. This will have to be passed on to the consumer. If they don't pass it on to the consumer, they are bad business people and will likely be out of business in a short time. For those of you who think these gun stores are printing money, I can assure you they are running on paper-thin margins. And anything like an additional taxation, which is going to cut into their profit margin, is going to have to be passed on to the consumer. Ultimately, this is a tax on the consumer for having the audacity to want to exercise an otherwise inalienable right. Governor, you should veto this bill, but you should veto this bill on simple constitutional principles, which it violates not one, but two actual constitutional amendments, okay? It's Assembly Bill 28. We'll link it up down below. You can see who sponsored it and who is all out there trumpeting this. We'll keep posted. Obviously, the governor has until October 14th, so one way or the other, we're going to get either a signature or a veto. In the meantime, if you guys got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington Gun Law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. In the meantime, let's all remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about here all the time, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.